Welcome to Lessons from the Sensei, Law, Business, and Life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Lessons from the Sensei, Law, Business, and Life with Denis Quintana, veteran Orlando defense attorney. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today we're talking about how long a criminal case takes in Florida and what can delay it. One of the first questions people have after an arrest is, how long is this going to take? And the answer is almost never as simple as they hope. Some cases move fast, others seem to drag on forever, and there are reasons for that that most people don't see. So let's get to what actually controls the timeline of a criminal case. Hi, Denis.
Hey, Sean.
We're going to get a little peek behind the scenes here, right? People have no idea what's going on behind the scenes oftentimes. So how early can you tell if a case is going to move quickly or turn into something long? What are the indicators from your point of view?
So here's the classic legal question answer for every legal question. Right? Doesn't matter whether it's criminal or civil. The answer is always,
it depends.
You got it, bro. You got it. It depends. Right? So look, it depends, number one, on the level of the offense, right? So in Florida, there are misdemeanors and there are felonies, and there are degrees of misdemeanors and degrees of felonies. But it also depends on the evidence, right? And to a large extent, it depends on the client, because if you're arrested, it's up to you to decide A, what your tolerance is, and B, when you're satisfied. Well, when I say what your tolerance is, how much can you bear being under, the scrutiny of having this case pending? How long can you tolerate this, cloud of guilt? And at the same time, to what extent do you want to get some sort of satisfaction? So clearly, if you get arrested, everybody will be satisfied if all the charges are dropped, right? Yeah. But let's say I stole somebody's bike. I did it intentionally. I was caught riding the bike. They have me on video stealing the bike. And when they arrested me, I said, I know what I did was wrong. I know this is not my bike. I just really wanted to ride this bike, right? So they've got all the evidence they need. I've confessed. I've accepted responsibility. Do I want this to go on for 6 months? Or do I just want to try to get this resolved as soon as possible? And there may be competing interests, right? The longer I wait, maybe the better chance I get. At the same time, maybe I just want to get this over with and move on. So in that regard, the client has the final say as to everything. But to step back, right, to try to give you a broad scale metric, misdemeanors in Florida generally have there's a speedy trial right. Speedy trial is a restriction that the Constitution places on the government, so that they have limits as to how much time they have before they have to bring you to trial, and those limits in a misdemeanor are 90 days, and so in a felony those limits are 175 days. So roughly a misdemeanor is going to be about 3 months long, and a felony is going to be about 6 months long. So it can change. It can be massaged either way. That's going to depend on the evidence. It's also going to depend on the client. Sometimes it depends on... Go ahead.
Well, no, I think maybe you're going there. I'm curious, like, what are the biggest things that...
Sometimes it depends on tactics, right? So I have, let's say I'm butting heads with a particular prosecutor. I had a trial with her last week. I beat her. She's pissed off at me. I have a completely different client that's now been assigned to her, and she doesn't care about my client. She's just pissed off at me, right? Because I beat her at trial. So now she really wants to, get her pound of flesh against me, and she's going to try to make my life miserable, right? Right. Just a personal vendetta kind of thing. Well, in a case like that, I want to string it along, because not only do I hope that she's going to get over it, but I also know that from time to time prosecutors get transferred, right? In Central Florida, prosecutors may be in a particular division, 6 to 9 months before they get moved on to a different division. And so sometimes if I just have an obstinate prosecutor who, for whatever reason, I can't get what I need done, I just wait it out. Wait it out. Next, give me another one. But but there's also other reasons, right? I may want to extend a case because I need additional time to chase down witnesses. I need additional time to conduct my own defense. I may have to hire an expert. That expert may be a crash investigator that's going to do an accident reconstruction. And so sometimes, justice takes time. So that 3 months misdemeanor, 6 months felony, those are not hard and fast. Those are goals, but they can be extended and they can also be expedited.
Yeah, just based on the circumstances. Some of those scenarios you talked about, okay, accident reconstruction or waiting out a cranky prosecutor. Are there other delays that sort of come from real life or somewhere else?
Man, so look, I mean, we all lived through the pandemic. And so,
Right.
remember when you weren't
Whoops, that
allowed to leave your
happened. Yeah.
house? Yeah,
Yeah.
you weren't allowed to leave your house. We all thought we were going to stay home in place for a few weeks and then everything was going to be fine. And then it turned out to be a lot longer, right? And then we had to have, like little arrows as to which way you're supposed to walk down the aisle at your grocery
Right.
store.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so when you translate that into the court system, the court couldn't subpoena jurors or witnesses or even their own employees to show up during COVID, right? Because there was mandated
Yeah.
social distancing. So what happened? Right? People didn't stop getting arrested, and the people that had already been arrested, the cases that had already happened 3 to 6 months prior to March of 2000, they
Oh
just
yeah.
got put on hold,
We got
right? And so some of those
caught in the wake
cases
of that.
caught in the wake of that for years. Speedy trial was
Wow.
waived, so we started appearing in court by video. We didn't start going to
Yep.
court for over a year after COVID.
Right.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
there are delays. There are reasons for delays that are
Yeah.
beyond, and the biggest delays that I see in our court system now, lab work. So a prosecutor has a case that needs
Yeah.
DNA, they send it to the Florida Department of
Analysis.
Law
Right.
Enforcement. DNA cases take a long time. Ballistics take a long time. Sometimes, if you, like, I've got a complex case, which is a racketeering case, has 18 co-defendants. So think about that. 18 co-defendants means there's 18 lawyers.
Yeah.
Try
No,
try
that's a lot
to
of paperwork.
try to get 18 lawyers and their schedules to agree on anything, right?
No,
It's like
forget it.
it's like herding cats.
No,
So
that's
it
the
just
scenario where you end up with cheese pizza because nobody
that's
can
it,
agree on
man.
anything.
That's it. But it takes forever to get to that cheese pizza, right?
Yeah.
Because the first lawyer is going to go, why pizza, right? Second lawyer is going to go, I'm allergic to cheese, right? I mean,
I
for
get it.
it,
Yeah.
so look, I'm Cuban, right? And we have a joke, right? For every two Cubans, there's three opinions, right? And so the idea is, when you have a complex case and you either have a lot of witnesses or you have a lot of parties, a lot of lawyers, that's going to slow down the
That's
process.
gonna slow. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I wanted to ask, like you mentioned earlier with the COVID, the timeline, the speedy trial was waived kind of a thing. And at what point does the timeline maybe stop being about the system or these uncontrollable circumstances and more about strategy? You mentioned waiting out a cranky prosecutor, but are there other, when you're plotting a case, are there other reasons to delay from a strategic point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in general, right, as in criminal cases, cases don't get better for the government as they get older, right? Why is that? Well, because they're going to rely on witnesses, and witnesses, not only do their memories fade, but also the ability to stay in contact with them diminishes. People move. People, even cops change jobs.
Yeah.
So
Well, you mentioned the prosecutors changing too, right? I mean,
prosecutors change, judges change,
yeah.
witnesses leave. So I'll tell you a funny story. I had my sister-in-law got a ticket for speeding. I said, Give me your ticket. I'll contest your ticket." When I contested her ticket, the day of the hearing, the officer for the ticket didn't show up. Now, that's not the surprising part. The reason the officer for the ticket didn't show up is because the officer was arrested for DUI. And so the officer got fired, right?
Okay.
So, I was able to get my sister-in-law's ticket dismissed, not because I'm a genius, just because, something happened, a logistical
Yeah.
aspect. And so the more time that passes, the greater that those kind of things come up, right? People go on vacation, people transfer jobs, people's memory fades, prosecutors get shifted around, and so time is generally on the side. And remember, while you're out on bond, or while you haven't been, gone to trial, you're presumed innocent. So, my clients are generally working and living their lives, and if it never goes to trial, then that's okay too.
What about the seriousness of the charge? Can that change as it plays out? How's that work?
Obviously, the more serious the case, the more likelihood that somebody's going to go to jail if they were found guilty. Then the more contentious every aspect is going to be, and that is because if there's a strong likelihood that somebody's going to go to jail, like go to prison, there's also going to be a strong likelihood that in the event they go to jail, that they're going to appeal. And so, what's an appeal? An appeal is, hey man, something didn't happen, or something happened that was not fair, was not right, or should have gone differently, and therefore I want a new trial, right? I want a different outcome. And so when you have a case, so let's say something like murder. Okay, if you're guilty of murder, you're very likely going to prison. But in a murder case, everything is contested, uh, not only because of trying to avoid going to prison, but also because if you're going to go to prison, you're likely going to appeal. And so the prosecutors don't want to keep trying cases over and over. The judges don't want to keep trying cases over and over. And so they make sure that they try to avoid error as much as possible. And so they err on the side of caution, of take the time necessary to get this right. You want to bring in a witness? Okay, I'll give you another month to go find that witness. Oh, you want to have a hearing about this particular aspect of evidence? Let's have that hearing now, as opposed to
Mhm.
let's have a trial without having ever debated that, and now that becomes an issue on appeal. So
Right.
the more complex, generally, the more time it takes.
Yeah, and the more likely that, like, oh, we don't have enough evidence, perhaps to uh,
Well,
win the
again,
case on that
for,
highest
for
level.
me, evidence is a fungible item. Right? It gets stale. It either gets stale because people's memories fade, or it gets stale because logistically it's just hard to shepherd all those cats to bring them back in at the same day and time that you need them for trial. And
Yeah,
so, winning is not just, hey, somebody is not guilty, but winning can be, well, you just weren't able to prove it.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
let's go back. I gave you an example about me stealing a bike. Let's go
yeah.
back to, I stole a bike, right? So let's say
Right.
I'm on video at somebody else's house, and I grab the bike, and the video sees me ride off with the bike. And then the cops stop me while I'm on the bike. Okay. And then I say, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Okay. All of that may be provable, but if the owner of the bike never comes into court and says, I didn't give Dennis consent to take that bike, they can't prove the case.
Ah,
Yeah. Right. So it's not sufficient enough for me to say I shouldn't have done that. And it's not sufficient enough to have a video of me riding away on a bike, because you haven't established that I rode away on a bike without the owner's consent.
yeah.
I
Interesting.
shouldn't have done that means maybe I shouldn't have crossed the street. Maybe I shouldn't have taken the bike for as long as I did, but that doesn't mean that I stole it, right?
Right. Right.
And what's the element of theft? Taking somebody's property without their consent. Well, if you don't have the evidence, you don't have the owner to say, Dennis didn't have my consent, then you haven't proven the case.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe it's because the owner was out of town, or maybe it's because the owner forgot. But again, in the real world, maybe morally I did something wrong, but in the legal world, in that game of chess, in that
Yeah. The
boxing
rules
match in the
say that
courthouse,
person has to come in. Yeah.
not proven. Not
Yeah.
proven means not guilty. Let me just put a bow on that, right? Not guilty means not proven. Doesn't mean you're innocent. Innocence a moral question. Judges never say, okay, I find you're innocent. Judges say, I find you're guilty or you're not guilty. It's either proven or not proven. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. It's a good distinction. We were talking about the potential benefits or just what happens when a case, goes on for a period of time. What about the sort of the flip side of that? What are the risks of trying to rush a case in order, like you said, sometimes you're just like, can we just get this thing over with? I don't want this hanging over my head.
Because generally you forego the opportunity to get the best result. If you're just trying to get the fastest result, and sometimes justice takes time, right?
Yeah.
So you may have ulterior motives, like, hey man, I got arrested because I came to Orlando and I stole a souvenir at Disney World, right? And I got caught, right? They got me on video, I got caught. But dude, I don't live in Orlando. I live in Iowa, and
Yeah.
I don't want to be here, right? Can I just plead guilty and pay a fine and get the hell out of Dodge, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have a competing interest that says, look,
Yeah.
man,
Do it.
under these circumstances, I'd rather resolve this sooner rather than later.
We started this with this idea of like what's going on behind the scenes. People don't see what's going on. When a case feels stuck, like I can imagine if, you're my attorney and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Why are, I haven't heard, nothing's happened in what seems like weeks. What's usually happening that someone wouldn't see?
A myriad of things, right? So,
Okay.
number one, let's say I want to take the deposition of a witness, right? The deposition is my opportunity to interview a
Hmm.
state witness to know what they would testify about if this case were to go to trial. And so, first of all, I have to subpoena that witness, right? And before I even subpoena that witness, I have to coordinate a date and a time that's convenient for the prosecutor. That also means I have to get a court reporter, and we have to get a room, and then we have to send a subpoena, and that subpoena has to be served. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
subpoenas have time limits. You can't just serve somebody a subpoena and say, you got to be in court tomorrow, right? You have to give them reasonable notice.
Reasonable.
Sometimes
Right.
it's at least 10 days. And so, coordinating the prosecutor's schedule, getting a court reporter, issuing the subpoena, having that subpoena served, and then having the person show up, that's just the first step.
Yeah.
Then you do the deposition, and what's the court reporter there for? To write up everything that's going on. So how long does it take to type that up? It might take a month, to type that up. So,
Okay.
you're not really seeing all of this stuff, but
Yeah. But
that's
2 months
the
have passed.
process that's going on. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's normal.
that's normal.
That's not even like extenuating circumstances. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So here's the
In your,
interesting part. The
yeah,
interesting part is criminal has a priority, right? As compared to
oh,
civil cases, right, where
sure.
somebody sues you on a breach of contract. I mean, ask anybody that's in business that's been sued or sued somebody. It takes years.
All
It
right.
takes forever to get something done in civil court.
Yeah, your fence is on my property. Well, good luck. I'm going to move before we resolve that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, listen, Dennis, we're up against time, but as always, thanks for being here, sharing your expertise and your point of view. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for the opportunity. I enjoy speaking with you.
That's it for today's episode of Lessons from the Sensei, Law, Business, and Life. If you'd like to learn more or speak directly with Denis Quintana, contact Sensei Legal at 407 694 5403. Thanks for listening. And it always helps if you found this episode helpful, leave a review. Maybe subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a future episode. We really appreciate it. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.